Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a great day as you join in on our next episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast, where it's my honor and privilege as your host, Dr. Jim Hoven, to meet with cool people doing cool things, making the difference in the lives of human beings every single day. And today is no exception. I promise you, I have with me today someone who is working in an incredibly important field. Actually, she's doing a couple cool things that we'll talk about, but she's working in the field of addiction. And addiction is a lot more than we think. It's a lot broader term. We're going to go into that, but some people think you're addicted to alcohol or drugs. You can be addicted to a lot of things. And Jo Weatherford, who's my guest today, is a specialist on all this. Jo actually has a master's degree in family studies and a specialty in addiction services. And so just in all things family development, she's a superstar. And then she took her training and went into the addiction side of stuff. And she has a crazy story that we're going to get into, but this is one that you're going to want to pay attention to, because I promise you, and she'll probably have the stats on this, there are far more people than we realize that are facing something that is akin to or straight up an addiction. So you're going to want to share, listen, do your thing with this, and this is going to be valuable information. So I can't even hold back another minute. Jo, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And this has been a really exciting show for me to see on the horizon as we were talking over the last several weeks to get this prepared. When we started out, by the way, I got to tell you, I know very few people, and I know quite a few people, but very few, I think I have 3 in my sphere to be exact, who have ever done a TED Talk. And you've done one. You're one of those. So while we're just meeting each other officially for the first time today, I just want to say, man, great job on the TED Talk. Number one, you did a fantastic job. Your story was compelling and wonderful, and it was a marvelous experience. Can you first tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I got to know what evolved. How did you get a TED Talk?
I love your excitement around that. Yeah, God, TED is just really revolutionized. I mean, just podcasts, short talks. I love it. People just sharing, there's no fat on the conversation. It's just the most important, get right to the point pieces. It's just great. Well, yes. So my story, I grew up, lots of addiction around me. I was addicted to alcohol for many, 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 many years, 15 years plus.
Now, when did that start? I hate to interrupt you, but I think this is a big platform and foundation for us to kick off from. Number one, you said something super powerful. People that had addiction issues around you, and I'm sure that leads to one of two things. Like my dad had an alcohol problem, and it drove me the other way because I saw how he was in his environment when he was drinking. And it just made me say, I can't do that. So I moved the other way. But I think for a lot of people, it's an attractor. First of all, is that your experience in that type of situation?
Absolutely. We tend to split strongly into one category or the other when that happens. So yeah, it's interesting because when both parents are addicted and we look at genes, you absolutely know you have it 100%, right? But then we look at the environment, because you can have the genes for anything and it doesn't matter if the environment isn't conducive to flip those genes on or off. So not only did I have 2 parents that held the addiction gene that I was gifted, and then also an environment that was very, very conducive. And really, when I say that, I mean, I'll own responsibility for that, a complete inability to cope with pain. And I had a lot of examples of a way to do that. And of course, alcohol readily available. And I went fully into that way of dealing with growing up in an addicted household. And
did that start early in your teenage years, Jo, or when?
At age 12.
Wow.
And I'm an all-in type girl. And I still am. It's one of my greatest gifts. And in this case, it's one of my biggest shadows, because that first time that I drank, I was like, oh, I found it. I found the thing that's going to make this bearable. I was so alone and depressed, and the heaviness and the weight. And you go, what do you mean you're 12? But I really lived in a world of misery. And the first time I drank and I got that escape, and I got a flood of those chemicals that I wasn't producing well myself, it was like, oh, this is it. And so it's so interesting because people will talk about addiction as a slow form of suicide. And it's like, I understand what they're saying. You know, you're drinking or you're using or whatever it is. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. You're slowly killing yourself. But the other side of the coin that I think is important to mention is that's also what kept me alive. And not to take it super dark right off the bat, but you know, for me, I don't know if I would have chose to stuck around in this lifetime if I didn't have a way to escape. So it was like that horrible cycle. The thing that was giving me this reprieve was also killing me, but yet it allowed me to be here. So it was just it was a very, very, very dark place.
Well, you know, I just try to put myself in a little 12-year-old girl's shoes and then finding this and understanding it. You haven't experienced hardly anything yet in your physical development and maturity, and all of a sudden your body starts changing, and then you have hormone stuff coming, and you have all these things coming at you. You're in school, whatever sports or activities you might have been in. I'm interested to hear how you navigated all of that, being all in on alcohol. Did your friends know? Were you really in isolation from that? Were you able to handle it all, or did something fall down?
Well, in front of the curtain, I was able to handle it very well. My whole life, I've been just a high achiever. So it was like I was fully addicted to alcohol, and yet, you know, I graduated my master's with a 4.0. You know, I'm fully addicted to alcohol. I got a full ride academic scholarship to some of the top universities in the country, and I graduated when I was 16. I was a full-blown alcoholic, and I was getting prepped for the Olympic softball team at one point. I was a pitcher, so I was an athlete that was traveling. I also played travel junior Olympic volleyball. My team went to nationals and took second. I had nothing to do with that, by the way. I rode the bench and cheered them on, but still, it was my team. It counts. So
yes.
I was always very high functioning. When I finally, the very last time I went to rehab and it clicked and worked, people were shocked. They were like, what do you mean you're going to rehab? And it's funny because even on my TED Talk, some of the comments, which I should have taken that advice to not read comments, but the curiosity part of me wouldn't allow that. So I started reading comments, and people were overwhelmingly saying like, oh, what did she go through? You know, I bet it was nothing. Oh, she, you know, there's no way she was addicted. Look at her. People that are addicted don't look like that. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe in this day and age, we're still talking about addiction that way. The stigma is still the homeless person under the bridge with a needle in their arm. It's like, no, it's doctors, lawyers, police officers, you know, like it's everyone that we're dealing with this. And so I think like the high functioning alcoholic in me is so prevalent in this society. There's so many people, we have no idea what it looks like when you peel back that curtain, because I was very sick. I've worked in the addiction field now for over a decade. I did work in treatment centers. I used to work one-on-one with individuals. I will say with complete honesty, I was one of the worst cases that I have ever seen.
Wow.
I mean, I was absolutely, if I didn't drink DTs, I mean, it was awful. And I can't tell you how I managed to escape the scrutiny. And, you know, people that were in my inner circle knew, because I couldn't hide it, but I could definitely hold it together for a few hours a day, long enough to be able to get my homework done or show up. And of course, being young and being an athlete, you know, your body's just different. What's sad to me is I think, what would I have been available for if I had been taking care of myself, you know, as an athlete? It's,
Yes.
you know, regret is a wasted emotion. I really believe that. But yeah, I was able to maintain.
That is beyond impressive on one side, and I'm grateful that you were able to do it, because obviously it took you to where you're at now, helping so many people and those who help those who have addictions, right? Like that's kind of where your space has gone now. And when we're looking back at how you were going through all this, you got your master's degree, and at that time you still were addicted to alcohol?
I was.
And so what made you decide to go in the educational vein that you did, Was it a wounded healer kind of thing? Like, man, I got to learn about this for myself and then maybe I can help me and others, or was there something totally different there?
Yeah, no, you hit it exactly spot on. Is that wounded healer, and still to this day in my life, whether it's trainings or personal development or my social media content, I certainly teach what it is I need to learn. I dive into topics that are prevalent in my life. And when I first decided, because I worked in the television industry, I was in LA. I was after college, that was the route I went, and it was great because it was encouraged in in the entertainment industry to be that girl, that party girl, drinking all the time, whatever. It was fine. I was modeling, and it all worked. And so what happened was I actually got sober for a period of time, and I thought, oh, I want to go back to school. I want to get my master's. I need to get out of LA. I need to get out of the entertainment industry. I'm never going to survive here. So I'll go back to school and I'll help people do what I've done. And it's crazy because we don't think about this until we do, but so many people that work in the addiction field have gone through addiction themselves. And I don't like to say that relapse is a part of everyone's journey. That's a crazy story. I would never say that, ever. But the reality is a lot of people do relapse. And so there's a lot of people that work in the addiction field that are still battling their own demons, which is one of the reasons I like to really focus a lot of my efforts on helping people who help people, because it is very, very difficult. There is so much secondary trauma. Why I don't work individually with addiction anymore is because I put myself in that energy and that heartache for 15 years. It's very difficult to put myself back in it now and be with that level of pain, which is where I work with the professionals. But to answer your question, I was actually sober when I went back to school initially. And I had a couple of years and then I relapsed, and then here I am. I'm almost done with my program. I've got my whole life trajectory laid out. I'm going in this direction. And so here I am, trying to hold both. I am this person, and I'm trying to keep it from people. So it's such a shattering moment
Yeah.
to
Try
and hold both.
it's so funny. I occasionally I'll hear some rap music or something, right? Or I might train to it or something. And I think it's the lyrics of an Eminem song talking about where, here I am, you're looking at me as your hero, and I'm on stage and I just relapsed a week ago or something, and you don't even know it. And I can only imagine again, because I saw how my dad went, I kind of went the opposite, where just alcohol wasn't my thing or drugs or whatever. But I know that this concept of guilt and shame are vital concepts in all of this, and what that feels like when you say, I'm this person, and then you do something that you don't necessarily want to do. It's not congruent, but yet it is who you are. And I got to bring up, Joe, as I was watching, I took notes when I was watching your TED Talk because it was profound. And if people haven't seen it, I'd invite them to go watch the TED Talk. You can tell them how to get there. And if you've never heard of TED Talks, it's basically they're short talks that go anywhere from 12 to roughly 22 minutes, and they put them all over the country. There's a national symposium and all these little ones, but it's a big deal to get one. I'm telling you, you don't just say, I think I'm gonna do a TED Talk, right? You have to get chosen, and then you get coached up so that you make sure it's done right. It's a huge honor to do one. And one of the things that you said, Joe, in there that I had never heard of before in all my years was the difference between guilt and shame. So I wrote it down. Guilt says what I did was bad. Shame says I am bad. And from what you're talking about here, you're going through getting your master's, you're almost done, and then you relapse. I want to focus and come back in on that guilt and shame thing.
Oh, it's beautiful. And I love that really resonated with you, and that we're talking about it, because this is, when we look at all addictions, shame is, I won't say always, but most often at the core. It's like, why are you drinking? Because I'm ashamed. Well, why are you ashamed? Because of what I did when I was drinking. So there's this core root issue of shame and unworthiness and not enoughness. And we drink or use or whatever the behavior is to stop feeling that. And then we actually do show up in the world as that. You know, we are doing things that we are truly ashamed of. And so, you know, whether you're in addiction or not, we all have this experience of the cognitive dissonance. You know, I want to be this person and this is who I am right now. And we make it so much bigger, like I am that. You know, so I am my mistake instead of I made a mistake. And it becomes this all-consuming way that we view ourselves. And, you know, it's a little tricky, but if I hold the energy of shame, you know, then of course the universe is going to send me opportunities and evidence of more shame. You know, we don't attract what we want, we attract what we are, you know, so yes. As I vibrate at the frequency of shame, I am bringing more of it into my life. And so to be able to go, okay, time out, pattern interrupt that. The truth of who and what you are is not that. And own your behavior and fix it. You know, it really is. And with addiction, obviously, it's not that easy. There's a lot that needs to happen. But I truly don't believe that shame is a healthy emotion at all. Because if I believe I'm terrible, bad, and wrong, why would I get better? Why would I even explore my behavior? Why would I even ask for help? I don't deserve it. You know, and that's one of the biggest reasons people don't. There's a million barriers to treatment. But one of the primary ones is a deep-rooted belief that they do not deserve to get better. You know, and so I think it's so important to, with everyone, with kids, with adults, addiction, not, it's like, okay, what you did is out of alignment with who you are, but who you are is beautiful. You know, it's so critical. We believe that we need to become lovable. We need to become worthy. And that starts very early on, this conditional love. Even people that had amazing family lives and parents are attuned and, you know, lack of like overt big trauma. It's like we learn early on that when you do this, you're more lovable. When you do that, you're less lovable. I mean, when a baby's first born and the mom's got this flood of oxytocin, it's like, sure, just lay there and crap all day and cry and keep me up all night and I love you regardless. You're precious and perfect, right? And then, you know, slowly but surely the oxytocin wears off and the sleepless nights kick in. And then all of a sudden it's like, don't do that. And you're in timeout. And, you know, then we get into the later years. And it's like, I love you as long as becomes the narrative so much, at least as we interpret it, right? I love you as long as you're pretty. I love you as long as you keep your weight down. I love you as long as you're athletic. I love you as long as you don't tell me what to do. I love you as long as you're quiet or smart or fill in the blank. And we build our whole lives around creating this persona that we think will get us the love and attention we want. And then at some point we start believing we are that, you know? We literally become our own avatar. We forget that it's like, no, there's this whole preciousness that existed far beyond and before.
And you know, that's really fascinating to me. That opens up something completely different in my mind of, first of all, on a stat, do you know stats off the top of your head that would speak to the prevalence of the problem of addiction? And again, you can be addicted to anything from, you know, food, alcohol, sex, drugs, TV, shopping, work. Like there's lots to be addicted to. Is it fair to say that most people are at some level at least obsessed, if not addicted to something, or is that going too far?
I mean, I believe so, and everything is on a continuum, right? So, you know, maybe my thing is I zone out and watch Netflix, right? I have something I don't want to feel, and so that's my way of numbing out. And then what are the consequences to that? Okay, they're pretty minimal. And you know what? Life is hard. We all have stuff. I still have stuff. I'm a big harm reduction person. You know, like,
explain that. Harm reduction. Explain that. Because I love that term, but people might not have heard of it in the context that you're meaning.
Well, okay. So for example, clean needle programs are, I believe, a beautiful example of a harm reduction approach. Okay, so you have somebody that's addicted to heroin. Well, if they're going to get better, it's a lot easier to get better when they don't have co-occurring HIV, Hep C, or some, big thing that they're also trying to deal with. So a harm reduction approach, reducing harm, would be to give them a clean needle. They're using anyway. And so here's one way that we can show compassion. It's our way to engage with the community, people that actually distribute the needles. What a beautiful moment to have that conversation with somebody. So it's not even just the needle. It's the opportunity to build rapport, reduce that shame. Say, I see you. I believe in you. If you ever want help, I can offer it. And in the meantime, I want to help keep you safe. I want to help keep you alive because your life really, really matters. It's precious. I mean, it's so much of these programs that people go, oh, that's so bad. That's so wrong. That's encouraging drug use. I mean, that's crazy. Like if I told you right now, hey, I'm going to send a bunch of free needles and heroin to your office, like all of a sudden everybody's going to do it. It's so crazy. It's like, no, you're doing that or you're not.
Right.
And so that is the number one barrier to harm reduction is it enables drug use. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Taking away clean needle programs only creates more problems. We know that
Sure.
statistically. I get it's scary for people, and if that's not your world, it's not your world. That these programs are important because of, not to bring it back to shame, but I probably will a million times because that's where it comes back to. But it's like, no, how do we allow this person to start understanding they are more than their addiction? Like, who would you be without your addiction, right? Like, let's tap into that. What's precious about your life beyond this?
Yeah, and are people, is there a point that you've seen either through your experience, your training, now you coaching the professionals who work with these folks, is there a point where the person has to fake it till they make it or be convinced that there is worth because of the depth of shame when like I've told people, man, you are amazing, you're incredible, and they don't believe it. So at some point they have to lean on someone else's strength until they get enough momentum behind them to go, you know what, maybe I am okay. I mean, I know like if all the homeless people are living in the streets, it's hard for them at the same level and the energy like you talked about to maybe lift each other up. Maybe there's one or two super motivated guys and gals that are just, they're having a tough time and they help lead everyone through. But that's a challenging point, just like it is if, like you talked about earlier, the doctors, the lawyers, the professional students who are all hooked on whatever their trip is, for them to not get swept up in the guilt and shame so bad that when someone tries to tell them, hey, you're all right, that you're all right. What's that process like?
That's beautiful. Well, I think one of the first things when we look at what is support, if we're going to help somebody, whether it's a friend or we're in a professional setting, you take somebody that is really, really, really in a lot of pain and you're like, you're lovable. And they're like, you're crazy. I mean, truly, they don't feel it. They can't access that. That is not their reality. So I love that you point that out because to me, what it is it's a gentle, reoccurring invitation. And when you meet somebody with dignity and reverence and you treat people as if they matter, you hold the energy for them, right? Not even self-love. We're not even going there. Let's just start with a basic humanity of your life matters. We don't even need to know why. You don't even need to believe it yet, okay? But I'm going to treat you with so much dignity and respect, and I'll believe for you until you do. I mean, that is a gift that people who have done their work and are doing well at this stage, from my perspective, I would never say we owe anyone anything, but if you have it, offer it. Because if you can carry that for somebody for a moment, the belief that they matter, that their life has this untapped, unbelievable potential, and that's an important thing, and why I share my story so much and why I did a TED Talk is because what we hear all the time is people don't get better. I hear this all the time. People don't change. And about lots of things. Once a cheater, always a cheater. And you hear these beliefs over and over again. And I'm like, not true. Sometimes the person that cheated and blew up their marriage is the safest person in the world to get into a relationship with because they have worked through the pain of being that person, right? So we also do this with addiction. Oh, once an addict, always an addict. Nobody gets better. And I will give you this, the treatment stats are dismal. And if you know anybody that's gone through addiction, it's very, very rarely that the healing process is linear. Like, you start here, you decide to get better, and then you are, it's jagged, it's messy. But my knowing that healing is always possible, I am absolute proof that the worst case scenario, multiple suicide attempts, I've been in mental institutions. I mean, I didn't share most of the nitty gritty part of my story because it's just, ugh, and the world has enough of that. You know what I mean? So, but it was really bad. And I got better. So, I mean, for me, that's what I feel is so important. It's like the potential, the possibility. So if somebody is in this place of deep self-hatred, it's not like, hey, you're lovable. It's like, hey, your life does matter. And I know this. I know it in my bones. I know it, and truth is always truth. It doesn't need you to believe it. It will always be true. Like, your life can be different.
Wow, that's powerful. Is what you said foundation? Like, we have in my family, we have some very on the inner circle folks who have gone through addiction processes, and we've had rehab in our family, and so I've experienced just a taste of what you've shared in your life from the next level out, right? Of watching someone that I care for and love very deeply go through something like this. In the facilities that are designed to treat people with addictions of whatever form, do they understand as a fundamental core concept what you just shared about the need to go beyond process and go into that energetic caring place, that compassion of saying, hey, I'm going to care for you and I'm going to hold you in this space until you have enough strength. I'm going to believe in you when you don't. Is that a core concept of how rehab works, or is that something that maybe we should look at adding into those types of facilities?
Oh man, that's a great question. I believe the intention is there. I do. I believe the system though is just designed for everyone to fail. I mean, you go, okay, well, we're going to have you come into treatment for 28 days. You've been hooked on meth for 18 years. The amount of trauma you have is like so vast, that maybe if we spent 5 years working together, we'd get through the first few chapters. But we're going to have you come in and we're going to take away the one thing that makes life worth living, right? And you're going to be here because you were either arrested or people told you they wouldn't love you anymore, right? Something has happened, right? That lands you in here. And you might have the capacity to hold a thought in a week from now once you detox. And then we've got 21 days to dig into your stuff. Oh, and by the way, when you leave, you're going to go back because you have no resources, no training, no vocational opportunities. You have no money, literally zero marketable skills. And so you're going to go back and live with your boyfriend that beats you and makes meth. But oh my God, can you believe that they relapsed? Yes, 100%. I would put all my money on black that person's not going to get better. And then you have these therapists that come in and are like, oh my God, I really want to help. And it's like, here's 80 people you get to see a week. Oh, and spend half the time writing your notes so that we can justify our billing process. I mean, it's just... So I believe that people understand that concept, and I believe in treatment. People really, really care and they want to help. And it's like, I'm going to tie your hands and legs together and go run that marathon. And you're like, I can't. Oh, and by the way, do it in 28 days. You are literally inching on the ground, but like, make it happen. It's not conducive. We have not set people up. It's like a Band-Aid on a compound fracture at best. And then we go, oh, well, treatment doesn't work. It's like, yeah, you're right. That doesn't work. Of course that doesn't work.
Is there a program or a system that if someone is listening or watching and they're like, man, I know that I need to do this, I need to go through something, or someone I know has a problem. Is there a system that you found that would be a good one for people, or systems for them to consider? Obviously, you got everything from the classic AA and all the other A's, right, that go with that. And then you've got a Narcanon type of thing that has kind of a Scientology base to it. And then you've got the, Betty Ford clinics, these real high-end things. for the average person, is there a direction that someone could go to start finding these kind of long-term things? The one thing I would say about, AA versus Narconon, the 28-day thing I thought was insanity. And the Narconon thing, while some of the concepts were bizarre to me as an outside observer, Narconon did say you don't leave here till you clear the levels, till you clear the steps, right? I mean, obviously you can obviously do what you want, but you're not cleared from the program in a time frame. And I thought that was one really unique thing that I was like, very, very interesting, that you had to pass the whatever tests were, the gauntlets, in order to move to the next level, and you didn't get out until you passed all the levels.
Yeah, I mean, that's wonderful. And I definitely think, the most important thing is you just keep trying things, right? You throw a million things at the wall and hopefully one of them will stick. I mean, I had done AA, Smart Recovery, like I went to one of those $100,000 treatment centers in Southern California. I mean, I literally did the spectrum of all of it. So, one of the things I heard a lot going back to those belief systems that are 100% not true is AA is the only way. And I heard that a million times. And for me, AA did not resonate. I am so thankful for it. The people in AA that sponsor one another, the community that they create, the lessons, the steps. I mean, that's Course in Miracles stuff. I mean, it's like,
Yes.
I think it's so beautiful, so powerful for so many people. It has helped millions of people. So please know I am not by any means saying anything bad. For me, my experience was not good. I had really predatory behavior. It didn't resonate. And I thought to myself, if A is the only way, then I am absolutely going to die an alcoholic, because I'd rather be drunk and miserable than sober in here. It just was a horrible fit. And so I want to put that out there, that there are so many different modalities. For me, it's just so timely we're having this conversation, and I'm truly heartbroken about this. The program that I went through that finally did it for me just closed.
Oh,
And
no.
you look at COVID, I mean, I don't have the actual stats, but I will tell you, even within my inner circle, I have friends that have been in long-term recovery, and I'm talking like 10 plus years, 8 plus years. 5 went back out. I mean, COVID just at the root disrupted us for so many different reasons.
Yes.
We all know it, right? Nothing I could say would illuminate that more than your felt experience of it. So 5 people went back out. I'm getting calls at an astronomical rate. We had another fentanyl overdose in my small community. I mean, I've never gotten this. I mean, I've never seen it like this. To me, it is the worst. And you think about how many people developed something in 2020 that we're not quite even seeing yet. All of the kids that grew up during that, I mean, we can look at the brain and development and social conditioning and all this stuff and know, like, when those kids hit puberty, it's going to be an interesting experience. And so, and I'm not a doomsday person by any means, but I think we really need to have good options available. And the fact that this treatment center just closed is heartbreaking. So I went to Schick in Seattle. It is the only treatment facility of its kind. And it was an aversion therapy treatment center, which people will say that's torture, that's archaic, and that's fine. Believe whatever you want. And it was torture. But for me, it worked. And it was 10 days. It was 90 grand cheaper than the other place I went that didn't work. And I've been sober over a decade, and I've never wanted to drink. It completely rewired my brain. And when I look at my cohort, there were 20 of us. I've lost track of some people. Some people did go back out, but 5 of us over a decade are still sober.
Wow.
Out of 20. Nobody has treatment results like this. Nobody. And so it literally rewired the brain to take away the craving. Now, you have to do the work afterwards, but you didn't feel this compulsion. I didn't want to drink for years before I finally quit. I wasn't one of those people in denial. I was like, oh my God, I need help. Please help me. I tried everything. I could not stop. And this saved my life.
I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and he had on a female comedian. I can't remember what her name was, lovely young lady. And she talked about a book that's written like How to Stop Drinking or something, like a very simple title. And her point to that book was, by the time you're done, the author takes away every single, and I shouldn't have even brought it up because I can't remember the author's name, I can't remember the book, so I'm just going to create more questions. But I don't know if you've heard of it, but basically every excuse that someone who is drinking is taken away, so that by the time she's like, you can drink, or there's one for smoking. She goes, I was a raging alcoholic. She goes, I would even drink while I was reading the book, but by the time the last page of the book was done, it was over. I'm like, that's amazing. But it does go to show you that there is this connection between the mental decision to do anything in our lives, whether it's stop something, start something, or continue something, and the emotional preparedness that we have for it, and then the teacher showing up, right? The resource showing up. It's fascinating to me, like programs working, not working, and something being so different. I do think we need all kinds of different tools in our tool chest for this. I just think that we need soft tools and hammers, and it sounds like you went through the hammer, and that's what really worked for you.
It did. And I mean, it is amazing. And you're right. When people are ready, they're ready. We also know that people will go to prison and stop using because they just had to stop. And that was the thing. So, I mean, you can take a million different people and get a million different ways that it worked. And maybe it's destiny, karmic, like it just was going to happen this lifetime for them. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know why somebody gets sober when somebody else doesn't. What I do want to address, though, is this idea of denial. I personally don't believe in denial. I think people know exactly what's going on, but they don't want to change, and for me to admit I have a problem, you may have different, expectations. I may have to do something about it, but especially at the addictive level, I mean, come on, we all know. And this, oh, well, they said they didn't have a problem. Okay, but like we know,
Yes.
I know it, you know it, everybody knows it.
How do you break through that? Because I would think, I love what you just said about the denial thing. I think I totally agree with you. I never put it in that perspective, but I think that the person is not in denial necessarily that they have a problem. They're in denial that they are ready, want, or need help, right? And so the denial thing could be almost a split path, that I'd never thought about that till right this second.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the traditional model is this, just hardcore. We're going to do this intervention. We're going to give you ultimatums. We're going to tell you if you don't stop, you don't have access to us anymore. And I'm not saying that's wrong at all. I mean, I am a big believer in personal responsibility and boundaries. So, I do believe there is a compassionate, loving way to approach those conversations. And, you take like different tribes, right? That people have studied. And it's like when somebody in the tribe goes against the community standards, rules, they're addicted, they stole something, whatever, right? They violated the group container in some way. They invite the person to a conversation where the tribe tells them what they love about them, why they're precious, why they matter to the tribe, why they're necessary, and then invite them to get help or do, whatever it is. It's just a different approach to a problem. And it's like, instead of do this or I won't love you, it's like, do this because we love you. And then the other piece of it is, and if you don't, these are the consequences. I mean, we all understand that. We do since we're little kids. You touch that hot stove, you're going to get burned. You steal from people, you treat them poorly. You are this chaotic, all-consuming energy, like whatever. Like, no, the people are not here to babysit you. But the conversation can be had so differently about, this is your strength. This is what I see in you, like the energy and the delivery of the conversation. I mean, that's just 101, right? Communication. It's 70% how we say it, 30% what we say. So I'm certainly not advocating that we don't, have those conversations with people. Quite the opposite. I mean, one of the biggest work that I did on the university and with fraternities primarily is like, how do we create a culture of permission where we have the hard conversations? You know,
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to bring that up.
table.
Yeah, because you taught at the university system for a decade, and I'm interested because that is one of our, I don't know, perceived anyway, one of our most vulnerable populations to substance abuse, right? I mean, because you're coming out of high school, that if you had a good home and you were supervised, now you got all this freedom released and the no chains, and you can make all these decisions, and maybe you're turning 20 or 21 right at that time. And I don't know, maybe that's even a misconception or a misperception of the age that addiction is really taking hold in today's day and time. But what did you share with those young people? What messages and how was it received? Did they take that like, you know what, man, I'm going to think about this, or like, we're fine? Like, what was that process like, teaching for a decade?
Well, you know, if the measurement of success was lowered binge drinking, I mean, I would say, I don't know if I was very effective. But if the measure of success was we had very, very, very good conversations, we implemented as many harm reduction strategies, to go back to that, as possible. Like, look, if you're going to have people in your house drinking, you need to have people that are supervising, that can help, that can see if somebody's not doing well, you know, that can get help if necessary, that is containing this on some level, you know. So, I mean, it's not a popular opinion, but it's like, yeah, I was the person that went out there and said, if you're going to do drugs, buy a test kit. You know what I mean? Like, test your stuff. And furthermore, what are you looking for? And Dr. Gabor Mate did a whole talk on this, and it's spectacular, but it's what's right with the drug. We want to come in and be like, drugs are bad, don't do that, whatever, right? We make drugs responsible at a level that is crazy. You know, we don't blame a deck of cards for compulsive gambling, but we just cut off from the conversation of what's right with the drug. And when we can start having that conversation, what is it you're looking for? I mean, you think about a college campus, so much of the bonding and connection is done over drinking, you know, and using. It's a way to connect. We're looking for connection. And so how do we have those conversations with students, which is like, this is what you really are looking for. You know, not all. And a lot of students are coming in already with really problematic binge drinking behaviors. You know, I mean, that ship sailed years before. But it's, you know, it's like, how do we, one thing that always stuck in my mind that I hated, but I think was true, was like, don't do anything you can't recover from, you know? And again, how do we mitigate? Because we can go in there and be like, okay, this is bad and this is wrong. And I'm all for honest education. I really am. But when you tell people that marijuana should be the same drug schedule as meth, you lose them. You have zero credibility. Thank you, government. Nobody wants to hear anything from you. You have completely lost all authority. And the reality is like, marijuana can be bad for people, right? I know students that played Call of Duty in their dorm room all day, lost their scholarships, lost their friends, and had to move back home with mommy and daddy, live in the basement. So it's like, was marijuana bad for them? Yeah, it was. That the way they were using it was not a wise choice. You know, just like there were students that were 4.0 mechanical engineering majors that smoked weed all the time and were killing it in life. So when we focus on the drug or whatever it is, we lose it, because it's about the characteristics of the person using the drug. It's the compulsion that they are using it. It is that spectrum we talked about earlier of, what does this really look like? Is it kind of abuse, or are we full-blown addiction? What are the negative consequences? Are you getting arrested, failing, like you're about to get divorced, you're driving with your kids in the car? Or is it like, ooh, that was kind of an embarrassing moment, didn't really like who I was that night, whatever, right? So we need to be able to talk about all of it. And what we have done historically is scare tactic campaigns, which only work for people that didn't need them in the first place. Historically, you take a bunch of people that were arrested for a DUI, right? Or whatever, had some kind of alcohol infraction. You put them in a, you know, one of those DUI court conversations, right? Where panelists come up and talk about the fact that their kid was killed by a drunk driver, or they killed somebody in a drinking and driving accident. I mean, it's horrific, you know? I mean, but the people that walk out of there and like, I would never drink and drive, were the people that already weren't going to. You know, the people that are past that level, it's, you know, you can feel empathy and compassion, but it doesn't change behavior. Knowledge doesn't change behavior. And we want to cognitively attack this program instead of holistically, which is, what does it do right for you? What are the driving issues? How do we provide you resources? Like, how do we help you build a life beyond just stopping using? It's such a complex issue. But when we meet it with compassion and we meet it honestly and not just go, not possible, or not our problem, or out of my scope, or all this stuff that we do, we lose it. And you can't, I will say it again, you cannot tell people drugs are bad, don't do them, and expect anything to come from that.
Right.
From anybody that was interested.
I want to circle back around really quickly on something that you said, that when I heard it in your TED Talk, and then you referred to the doctor that said it, I had to think it through for a minute in what's right with the drug. What is this thing doing? And now what I hear you say, because I want to make sure that people get this message, is we do what we do for the feeling we get from what we do, right? Tony Robbins talks a lot about this in a lot of his work, of saying, we're driven by carrots and sticks, and more stick than carrot. But once you get a physiological substance on board, that now you feel like you need that, it's still, you're needing it for something, for an emotion or a feeling. And so if what I think I'm hearing you say is correct, we got to look past, like, what's right about the drug says it makes me feel happy, it makes me feel less pressure, it makes me feel at ease. Then we need to look at other habits or resources or tools that replace some of those feelings that we have. Just like in an alcoholic, then maybe instead of taking alcohol, they give you a drug that stimulates some of the same feelings, but not exactly. Am I on the right track there, or am I totally off?
No, it's exactly right. I mean, when you look at why we use at that compulsive level, but really any level, right? I mean, there's lots of people that drink that aren't alcoholics. Why do you do it? Well, it either takes away some of my social anxiety, or it's a way to connect with my friends, or I enjoy the taste and it releases a little bit of dopamine and serotonin and I feel better, right? So it always is about that. When we look at the more compulsive use, it's either to start feeling something or to stop. So one of the things to remember is, a lot of people with a lot of trauma, the brain is producing adrenaline or cortisol, right? We're in that fight, flight, freeze, or it's producing the feel-good chemicals of serotonin, dopamine, all of that, right? And so it's one or the other. When we don't produce a lot of those feel-good chemicals, we can then hijack and become our own best pharmacist to induce them. So a lot of people with a lot of trauma, they're actually craving a feeling of being alive. And you can see the drugs they use, right? I mean, Coke is a great one. Like, you want to, I'm not saying Coke is great. I'm saying if you want that explosion of feeling, vastly alive, right? You're going to have this big burst of emotion, right? The problem with it is you develop rapid tolerance. It hijacks a lot of other systems while we're on it. Anything has a consequence. You get like feeling this good, you're gonna feel that bad. Equal and opposite reactions. We don't get away with it. We don't get to reinvent physics, so there's a consequence to it. But we do it to feel something or to stop. You look at something like opiates or things of that nature. For me, drinking was about numbing out. And so that is the payoff. And yeah, we've got to figure out, what are you trying to numb from? Or what other behaviors could we implement to help you prime for that feel-good emotion? I mean, get up. 3 minutes of gratitude journaling, 3 minutes of, affirmative prayer, or reaching out to people saying, thank you for being this person in my life. 3 minutes of goal setting. Get out there and exercise. Be mindful what you put in your body. There's so many things that we can do to help our system work naturally, where we don't have the side effects of a foreign substance. Our brains, our bodies, our souls should be, when we are mindful and take care of them and do our work and process emotion and release it correctly, we're already in that state. Like, we
Yes.
don't need something to come in. But rather than be like, that's bad, that's wrong, you shouldn't have done it, it's like, how do we have the conversation of, wow, why are you wanting to numb out at the level that you are? I mean, you look at all the money we, in my opinion, waste trying to keep drugs out of the country, instead of realizing it's a supply and demand issue. You know, like, why are you doing that at that level? You know, I mean, it's that to me is the question that is so, so, so important.
Yeah, and it's a great question. And, I think one thing that I gathered from everything you've talked about is, as I'm distilling it down for myself and just through my own brain, the same things that you just shared over the last 5 minutes that are great for someone who's traversing the journey of addiction is good for all of us. Getting up, doing some gratitude, getting some morning sunshine, getting some workout in, having great relationships, being told I love you. That's great for all of us. And I know that you're now also putting some focus on that, right? Like, you work with people because of your story, your journey, and your success. You have taken that, and now you've also created a program that you work with people who don't have an addiction issue, but have a I want to crush it issue. They want to do things in life, right? Like, you work with those people as well.
You know, it's a beautiful question, and I thank you for bringing that up. To me, it really comes to emotional intelligence. I mean, it's just so important. And what's beautiful to me about life is sometimes the simplest answers are the most effective. And it really does come down to being able to manage emotions. You know, we build a whole life around not wanting to feel something, whether it's rejected, abandoned, you know, whatever it is. And we create this whole life around protecting that feeling. And when you finally drop fully into the feeling, it loses its power.
How do you drop into the feeling? How do you do that? How do you drop into that feeling completely?
Well, I do believe that's where a coach, a therapist, somebody who can be supportive and can help you hold the space while you do it is important. Somebody that can help get you out, remind you that that's not forever. But it's really allowing yourself to feel what is coming up and not making that the entirety of who and what you are. Like, you can see it with anger easily, right? When I become my anger, I lash out, I act in ways that are not congruent with who I really am. I have become my anger instead of being able to witness my anger. So when I allow myself to be angry, all of a sudden I create this space for curiosity. I am not hijacked by it anymore. I create the opportunity to respond rather than being hijacked and just reacting, and therefore creating a whole new mess that then I have to revisit at some time, but I probably won't, and I'll just smash it down, and it will become more of who I believe I am. You know, and it's the ability to go, okay, what am I feeling? Investigate it with kindness, you know, bring that nurturing and compassion. So much of it is reparenting that little child in us that really believes it's life or death, you know,
That's
the
so
protection,
good.
the snub. Yeah.
That is so good. I have one final question for you. This has been amazing. This has been amazing. I could literally keep going on this for a long, long time. But here's the question. Have you been given or learned one piece of advice along the way, counsel, wisdom, that you consider a pillar, a foundation of your life that's helped you, again, overcome so many crazy odds, that you would like to share with people, as far as this is one truth that has made a huge difference in your life?
So for me, it really comes down to this idea: you're not responsible what happens to you, but you are responsible for healing it. So, you know, that it can come off as victim shaming or anything else, and I'm not saying that. People are truly victimized, and it is never their fault. And healing is their responsibility. And to me, I want that to be empowering. I want that to be the motivating understanding of I can shift out of this. You know, when we stay in that victim consciousness, we need to go there first. We have to feel it all. We have to grieve. We have to rage. We have to 100% allow ourselves all of the rage around it. And then we get to heal because we deserve it. Our life matters. We are not meant to suffer. When somebody violates us, that is their energy to hold. But what happens is they go, oh, I don't want it. And then we, the victims, pick it up. It's not yours to carry. You get to have a beautiful life and that thing happened to you. So it is this radical sense of responsibility, but done so with the most loving compassion ever. And it's not toxic positivity of, oh, it's just fine. It's not fine. It never was fine. It should never be fine. And so we have to go into the pain. We have to allow it. We have to grieve it. We have to feel it, experience it. And then we get to go and live. We get to live stronger, more resilient, more helpful. I mean, right now we are at a critical point. There's so much division. And I know you can go throughout history and find different times. I mean, it always feels like the worst ever right now, right? But like right now, to be able to show up with love and compassion for one another, we don't have to agree. We don't have to share the same story, whatever it is. But to be able to hold that belief that I believe in your healing, I believe your life matters. I mean, and again, the responsibility to do something about it. We all, in my opinion, we all carry that. And you have no idea how great your life could be. You know, when I was in my small story in a jail cell, you know, looking at like doing major time, I could have never imagined in my small story, limited capacity at that time, that 15 years from then, you know, I would have the life that I have. I'm like basically retired, living in Mexico with the man of my dreams. Like my life is freaking awesome. I could have never in that moment of hell had any idea what the universe had in store for me. You have no clue what's going on behind the curtain. Your dreams can be so much bigger than even you realize. And so I just, no matter where people are at, if you're in that space of absolute hell, keep going, keep going, keep going. Forgive yourself, move forward, own your life, own your story, be mindful of the lens in which you see the world, because that will become your reality. What you think about, you bring about every single moment. And you deserve a beautiful life. Show up authentically, you know, find meaningful connection, get yourself truly fulfilled in real ways, not these fake, you know, substance induced, like that's not life, you know, really it's awesome. And just keep that faith.
That is awesome. Like that's a mic drop moment right there. Jo Weatherford, you have been an inspiration to so many on this show, and I know you have all your own stuff going on. If people want to get a hold of you, learn more, find out more about what you're all about, how could they reach you?
I'm really, really active on social media. That's a great way to come into my world. I have Jo Weatherford Coaching through Facebook, and then I'm Jo Weatherford on Facebook and Instagram, and also joweatherford.com is my website, so you can certainly message me there. But truly, like, please do, any resources I can provide. I mean, people don't need to reach out with the intent to work one-on-one with me or pay me for anything. Like, let me know. I'm happy to send. If any of this resonated with you, like all the resources I can. I have a ton of free resources. So please, please, please let me know how I can support.
That is the best. Jo, thank you for taking so much time. You know, living in Mexico, I know that you've got an awesome life, and for you to spend this time with us made our lives awesome. And so now we owe you a debt of thanks. So thanks for coming on today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And to all those of you, again, share this, send it somewhere that someone else can hear this message. And remember, get out there and keep making a difference.
Thank you.